not so charming, charismatic, and energetic as Aura, but I'll do my best. I promise. She didn't even listen. Or she pretended. I'm very proud to be here in Africa. I think it's very common to say that I'm confident. It's full of diversity. I think there's no continent that there is no diversity. But every time I'm in Africa, I think it's a little bit different because I think every country is so full of diversity. Not the continent itself, but each country is full of different stories. It's full of different people, full of different culture. So this is a topic that interests a lot of media and information literacy, MIL, which is our topic here tonight. Media information literacy is a batch of practices and concepts that has been developed since 1930s, since the radio has come up as the first mass media communication. But at the same time, UNESCO internationally tried to wrap up this package of concepts in this acronym called Media Information Literacy, which is, I can resume as the skills to read, analyze, critique, and also produce media, and search and aim to build the most reliable story, the truth. So media information literacy is an umbrella concept that I think is present in almost all the lectures, the speeches, and the debates we have been listening today. But we have a short time, so we changed some emails between us before to try to address this debate with practices and challenges for media information literacy in each country or in each region that these champions here work, because I'm proud to be among those really champions here. I need to say that media information literacy I can believe that really can lead Africa together with the development of local technology, can lead it to a protagonism, and it's already doing it. Because I'll give the example of Nigeria here, that's been recognized with the work with media information literacy since the last presidential election. Very strong work, worldwide recognized about this. I can mention South Africa, I can mention Sudan, all my friends. I'm really touched to be here with you. And this is a kind of homage to all of you too, and a tribute to you. And so I will address the first question to my friends. I think Aura has already introduced you, but you can reintroduce yourself. Of course, I will start with my dear Ms. Prosi Sheila Kawala, which is very active in Uganda. But I will do the same question for you three, and then we return, and then we continue this chat. Okay? So the first thing I'd like to know, how disinformation, this concept of disinformation or misinformation, I think it's more in this case, reached your region. How it shows its face in your region. So, please, Ms. Prosi.
I hope it's fine. All right. Thank you, Alex, and thank you, colleagues. My name is Prosi, as I've been introduced, and I work with the Center for Media Literacy and Community Development back in Uganda. We work with a lot of young people, but also with grassroots communities mostly. And our focus there is to impart media and information literacy skills for leadership, participation, and civic engagement. And through our work, we've seen that misinformation impacts the way communities think, the way they make their decisions, and various choices with government. but also for their personal lives. And how misinformation shows its face in our local communities. I'll talk about three things, and I'll begin with something that we like to call consistency. Every time information comes to the community and it resonates with your beliefs, with the things that you've grown up probably, thinking about or seeing, it resonates with probably some traditions within the community, it means that you're going to be quick to accept or to agree with that kind of information, even if it were true or not. But also there is an aspect where information comes, and because it's all over, you want somehow to belong. So if it's about sharing information, because this piece of information has been shared a number of times, you think, okay, I think this is the trend. So you would also love to share that information because everybody is talking about it without taking due diligence to cross-check whether it's actually true or not. But there's also information, especially at grassroots level, that comes in from people who are informed. It could be the local council chair, it could be the member of parliament who comes up and brings such information to people down in the villages, and they will be quick to believe because, after all, this person is a big person somewhere, and so they are believable. So there's going to be that lavishness in really trying to find out whether this information is true. But where does this information come from, mostly, and why do people bring information that is false, that is true, that is fabricated? Usually, what we've seen in my community, misinformation usually comes up during, say, election periods, where it's political information, where people are talking about political ideology, and so you find that it's very easy also because somehow the communities are torn apart. There are those who agree with a certain political party, but there are those who disagree. So whichever information comes in which way, the people who side with that will be able to, go on and accept that kind of information without cross-checking. So the whole thing rotates around being able to cross-check this information, to fact-check, to know where is the source, why is this person bringing this information at this particular time, and for what purpose. So there is no skill in trying to fact-check this information, to question why this is happening or coming to me at this particular moment. But we also, because in communities right now, we have platforms like WhatsApp that's actually a catalyst. Maybe we talk about all these other social media platforms that are a catalyst for spreading this kind of information. And when we talk about information, it also comes in a number of ways. It could be just a rumor. I'll give an example maybe of when we had the outbreak of COVID. There was a lot of misinformation around COVID. And it started from somewhere and it came down, trickling down to the last person in the village. And it was so bad that at first, in the community where I come from, people thought the people who get COVID are people who travel. So that was the whole thing that was coming. It's only those people who are traveling that are getting COVID. They're getting the COVID from the airports, from the planes, and everywhere. And that was wrong information. But there was also, now when it came to the vaccination for COVID, very many people failed to go for this vaccination. It was really a tough war because there was also information that these vaccines are actually meant to make people, whether impotent or for women to stop, being able to conceive and so on, so that the population in Africa could actually go down. So there's that kind of information that comes in, and once it finds a community that is probably geared towards a certain belief. I mean, in Africa, we know having children is really something, you know. You're not going to talk about somebody not having a child or reducing the number of children that they want to have. So when that comes in, for a person who's at the grassroots, they will be quick to believe that, this has been going on, and now it is true that they would like to reduce the number of children that they are having. So misinformation manifests in a number of ways, but also it comes in a way that it will appeal to the things that you believe in, first of all, but also other things that probably appeal to your emotions, and also the kind of environment that you're in at that moment.
Amazing. I think, Ross, you added something that I'd like to say at the beginning, that misinformation and also media information literacy has its global aspect with G, because it's local, as you mentioned, but at the same time, at your speech, we can localize that it's a global thing too. I mean, touch global issues at the same time, touch community issues, as you added. Thank you so much. Now I will pass the floor to Monsieur Pascal, Blaise Pascal and Zogo from Cameroon. And I know, Pascal, you are active not only in Cameroon, but in Chad, in all the Francophone Africa, and also France. So how does misinformation show its face in your region?
Thank you, Alex, for asking me this question. I think my predecessor has more about all the problem we have. You are seeing that it's the same problem in Uganda, Cameroon, and in other countries. In Cameroon, I will take particularly three moments of this information. We had the first moment in 2016 at the beginning of the Anglophone, what we can call Anglophone crisis in Cameroon, where we have, if you know the context of Cameroon, is we have 10 regions and we have 2 of the regions are Anglophone and 8 of the regions are Francophone. And some guy in the Anglophone region take out, go to the bushes and wanted to separate Cameroon into 2 parts. So when in that fight with the government army, they started to use information, they started to manipulate content, video, image to send them by some platform like Facebook, like WhatsApp, especially WhatsApp, to make people fear about what they are doing and to have some kind of behavior for that people. I wanted to add only that, also that not only this information coming from that separatist, but also by the government. The government also shares some information to make know that they have a power, they win the war who are passing. That is, I think, that is one of the first moments of the information. The second moment I want to talk about is during the presidential election. If you know Cameroon, you know that we have one of the oldest presidents in the world, Biya, and in 2018 he was present in the election. And it was especially a moment because most of the young people were interested by the election in 2018, and because there is very young candidates in that election. And what we have shown that is that some strategy we saw in the American election, like in Donald Trump election, like fake news. We saw the same strategy used by some candidates in Cameroon. And that is what another second moment of this information. That moment is, as she said, the pandemic of COVID-19, where a lot of complotist theory were shared about the origin of the virus, about the treatment so many people share about the vaccination, share about, and many people that disinformation have an impact of getting in the hospital because not a lot of persons refuse to go to this hospital, and we have increases of all that kind of diseases. That is the big moment of disinformation in Cameroon. I can talk about the other country, but we will act after each person.
See, what happens is that sometimes in some moments of the story, I think you agree with me, with the matter of misinformation that just comes up and shows it more evident, but it has been always there somehow. I mean, in conflicts, it's always a war of narratives. Even Second World War, even before Second World War, we have something that we are shocking narratives and trying to take what is true, what's the right story. And I think here we now have a blend of practices because this process talk a lot about fact-checking and cross-checking. It's very important for misinformation literacy. And Mr. Pascal brought us the kind of other aspects of education that needs to be addressed there. And Professor Wallace from Kenya has one experience that's very important for us to know, because in some countries to reach public policies, they first organize within national organizations on media information literacy, in the sense of putting together the people who work with this. So we will talk more about this because he runs the Center for Media Information Literacy in Kenya. Professor Shishu, please.
Thank you so much. First, Professor is an aspiration which I hope to achieve as a lifelong learner. But in terms of distribution in Kenya, that's not called for a conference on its own, because Kenyans are quite active on social media. We have some kind of digital workers in terms of access. Of course, except for a few parts. And that's why when I was presenting yesterday, she mentioned that we were able to even bully CNN until they sent their director to come and say sorry to the audiences in Kenya. So I will distribute this information in Kenya where I was elect by what I would call a sharing syndrome. Sharing syndrome. People just share anything to belong or to rub arouse or to just, they cannot be started on their own, so they just share whatever information, what they're thinking about, what the content really is, or what it intends to achieve. I'll give an example. Way back before smartphones were available to everybody, I received a text from my mother late in the night. In Africa, however old you are, you are still a child too, your mother, especially. So the text that she sent was Africa forward with a strange number saying that if you receive a call from this number, you are going to die because it is from the devil. I did not take her back. I actually called her and told her, Mom, the devil does not have any foreign. So please don't say the others. We are living in our family. Don't waste your sense sending SMSs to everybody. There's no devils going to call. This is just some creative mind wanting to disturb you. So on that front, you see that the sharing syndrome is actually going on, and it's especially on WhatsApp. It also happens on Facebook and other platforms. But then there is the other aspect of this information, which is particularly dangerous. And it goes when it comes in terms of when this information is utilized. A lot of it happens during elections. We had even from Call of Africa yesterday how some of these things, they are not being done. There's someone who is investing in this information, given a particular point or what you want to achieve. And I spoke with a friend of mine who was in the Wikipedia Foundation, and they are actually doing some research on the weaponized aspect of this information, which especially happens during the elections. In Kenya, there are two scenarios, although they have not been properly researched on. They are only not about who has any information on that. During the 2017 election, we had of interference through social media boards on Cambridge Analytica. Then last year, when we had the election, which was very hotly contested as well, I think it's another aspect in Africa, there was deployment of disinformation and other digital aspects of the election, which is something that is coming up for us in this space. The digital aspect of elections is actually going to be the future of elections, even in Africa and elsewhere. So when disinformation is deployed for that purpose, probably you might think that you actually, it is a democratic process that produces your leader, yet it is actually the other way around. There was some kind of manipulation. I don't want to say so much about that so that we can move to the next question.
Thank you, Wallace. I'm not very professional anymore, but it's an aspiration we must follow. I think there is one thing that is evident here is that there is no silver bullet to tackle misinformation. We talk about media information literacy as one of the solutions that is part of an ecosystem of things that we need to address for this scenario. But at the same time, we have 10 minutes, so I'll ask you to stay in 3 minutes each one. I'd like to know, because all of you touch about the political aspect. I know you need to have courage to bring this aspect public, and I appreciate this. Because my next question is, do you think there are, and it's covered by Professor Prossi, do you think there are any eminent threads in MIL, in Africa, and mainly in your region, to develop media information literacy within your region or in Africa?
Any threats?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. If we are talking about threats to media information literacy, first of all, I think I'll talk about the media consumers themselves, who are, because, and I want to refer mostly to my community because that's where I've made interventions, that the first thing is also the general literacy levels for the citizens that we are working with. Because when you're talking about media literacy, is part of just like the general literacy levels. And what we found is that a number of people down at the grassroots, some of them do not know how to read or to write, and when it comes to media, you're looking at content that you have really to look at critically, that you have to try and process for you to be able to make sense of what is coming. So that alone, also like the person who is consuming the media themselves having the capacity to read, to understand, analyze this information is one aspect. But we also have a challenge that most of our governments, I'm talking my government, does not take media literacy seriously. You know, there is no funding for media literacy, and we also found challenges that where we made interventions, in the first initial stages, we are actually misunderstood because it looks like some sections of government entities want really the people to remain in a certain dark corner where they're not able to process information, actually first of all to access the information. Because when you're talking about media literacy, you must be able to find the correct information. Now you find that when it comes to information that deals with, say, development, community development initiatives and so on, there is a certain section of people who are in authority, who are the custodians of this kind of information. Now for people to be able to act on certain things, they need access to that information. it's not readily available. You really have to push to be able to get this information. Now just imagine a young person who's down in the village, has not gone to school maybe, but they have aspirations to participate in the development of their community. They need this information, but how to access it is a problem. So there's that kind of, maybe electricity or lack of support from the people who are the duty bearers, who are the custodians of information, and they're not giving it. And that's a danger, because every time we don't have truthful information, then there are different perceptions that will be formed. And that alone creates misinformation, because then people are going to begin finding ways of bringing out their own information, which is not correct, which is not verified. Yeah. But then we also have some laws, I would say, policies, and maybe the biggest one, the most important one is a policy framework around meal, which is also lacking. So for some of us who are doing meal, we are really doing it as isolated. In most places, we don't have an MIL framework that everybody in the country will be following, and that would mean that we also get support from other family entities. It's not there, and it becomes a problem. Yeah, maybe I'll stop at that.
Thanks. Sorry, we just have 5 minutes, so I'd like to share between you two. Because you two are representatives. Wallace here, an example from UNESCO Alliance in Africa, so they have a lot to say. Let's start with Mr. Zongo and then Wallace.
Okay, that I want to add after the girl is that in Cameroon in particular, and in Central Africa, the region that I know most about the information literacy, we have a lot of work to do. In Cameroon, we have a small, I can say small level, a big level on media information literacy, because we have made a lot of work in the country. But as she said, we have a challenge to have educate population on media information literacy. We have a problem with the policy. We don't have a public policy based on the topic of disinformation, hate speech, and we need to have it in our country. I had the luck to work with UNESCO on the MI curriculum, and that is what I'm doing now, is to propose to the authority, especially for educational authority, to implement this curriculum in the educational system of the country. That is fundamental. When we were working with, we have some problem to work with teacher, because when we work with the teacher, we train the teacher, they are not able to implement our training in their class because they don't have time to finish their own lesson and to add media information literacy. And that is why we started to work with other type of person like media, radio, community radio, and leader of civil society, leaders of civil society, and some activists, so that they can share their experience after the training to the other people. That is, we build the first, and the solution is to have the media information literacy at the early age. So in the class with small children, we can start to implement media information literacy. But that is the very big problem in South Africa, because the politics do not need, I don't know if they do not need it. I think with the problem of disinformation, we notice that some of the government are the author of disinformation. So we think that they don't have the motivation to implement it. And that is one of the challenges. Talk about the challenge of funding. It's a very big challenge, because most of our funding is coming from other countries, Western countries, that is not so good because the problem is ours. And that's what I can add.
Thanks, Pascal. Well,
Thank you. Who speaks last? Speaks longest. Of course, I'll take from my colleagues here challenges and threats. Number one, media information literacy is about producing citizens who can think critically. Citizens who can think critically. In Africa, we don't want those, especially on a large scale, for political purposes. We want those others. Digital, they just have a smart level of skills, but not necessarily critical skills. Because the business of the citizen is to hold people to account. So that's why you find that there's some kind of reluctance. We know that milk is like a donkey, but we have to paint it like a zebra so that it becomes attractive. So in our advocacy, for that calls for much more advocacy. I think COVID-19 helped a little bit because there was widespread disinformation, and then the need for me actually came up. And that's why you saw that disinformation is the low-hanging fruit where everybody is actually trying to do some activity around. But meal is such a large thematic area, and it must reach almost every citizen on the consumer end of news and information. We are talking about hundreds of millions of people in Africa, for example, and there are those other dynamics. So without a structure, indeed policy and legal, both continental and even country, then we find that only small citizen initiatives like the ones that we are doing here, which may not have a lot of impact, but at least we are keeping the conversations alive. We are also collaborating and partnering with other actors who have been there before in the field and have a lot of experience. We're learning from them and trying to trickle down some of the best practices for the benefit of all. Thank you so much.
I think we have here one thing that we can take from this debate is that we need to foster a culture of media information literacy. I mean, as something that is not isolated from the other things that we like the formal education itself, the literacy rates itself, like you brought this across. I think it's a culture of Maya, and for that we need funds, we need support, we need awareness to have more literary citizens. So thank you so much. If someone said that I danced last night during the party, it's fake news. So this is the first thing you need to know about media information literacy. Okay, thank you very much.
And we've become more connected than ever. I'm always curious what happened to Skype though. I mean, all of us were to an extent using Skype, but then COVID happened and then we all switched to Zoom. It's almost like Skype lost out on this opportunity to make money. Joy, where are you? Joy, I'd be very curious to know what Microsoft thinks about Skype losing out on this conferencing system, because Zoom just fixed that gap. And then we also know time and cost-saving experiences. So this conference, for me at least, is the first conference in person that I can attend since about 2019. I think the last one we had in Serbia on media and information literacy. However, in dealing with all of this, we are finding ethics and ethical challenges that is brought to the fore as soon as we are confronted with ICTs. I'm quite curious, does anybody here in your work in media, whether you're lecturing, whether you're a researcher, whether you're an activist, have you trained a little bit in ethics? Who has trained in ethics? Okay, not many. Great. Okay. Who of you know in your organizations, do you have a code of conduct or a code of ethics? Everybody? Maybe put it a bit higher. Who's got a code of conduct or a code of ethics in your institutions, generally speaking? Okay. Another question. Who of you in your organizations have got a code of ethics when it comes to the use of information and communication technologies? significantly lower, right? Okay, who of you in your organizations on the disciplines you're dealing with have got an AI or other emerging technologies? We're just riding the bandwagon of AI for this period. Who has an AI ethics policy at your institute? Okay. Have you seen how those numbers are significantly dwindled? Okay, so this is why information ethics is so important. I'm not going to delve into the philosophy and the background of it all, right? I have a very big appreciation in general for education. I want to say across Africa and my dealings with other researchers that we do have some form of an awareness of the philosophical foundations. Ethics boils down to how to act good. It's a concern with good conduct as opposed to bad conduct and behavior. So when we are dealing with applied ethics, information ethics, we are dealing with the ethical implications of information and communication technologies. So when I started with this around about 2010, people were thinking this thing is redundant. It's only within library and information sciences that we really deal with information ethics. Has anybody here studied or worked within library and information sciences? Okay, yeah, so you would have dealt with privacy, IP, copyright, proper referencing and everything. And now we are fast tracking to 2023 and boom, we are all dealing with information ethics. Which is why it's important for us to consider having policies in place to help guide our behavior and our conduct when we are online. Because it's affecting all of us. You're all on your cell phones. Please don't confuse ethics with etiquette. Okay, so I'm not going to point fingers if people are looking at their phones or reading emails, messaging friends or family or work. I know we're all very busy, so at least ethics and etiquette is not the same thing necessarily. But we have to consider having ethics in place, having training in place in order to assist our students or our colleagues or our networks. And then maybe just a very quick disclaimer, right? There's a lot of content in these slides, and it's a lot more theoretical. So just hashtag, I'm doing a workshop later that is concerned about practical considerations on media and information literacy and information ethics. So if you're interested in the practical components as opposed to like very dense theory, you can come to the workshop. I think the workshop is in this venue, in any case. So I would like all of you to consider, if you can take it home with you or to your institution, to please relay it to your colleagues. I think specifically in schools, this could be quite important, that everybody has to take some form of a custodianship or responsibility to ensure that you have appropriate policies in place, to do the training, and perhaps to be at the forefront in developing an AI ethics policy to assist within your environment. And please, you can swap out the AI for emerging technologies or ICTs or social media, but we know the technology is going to keep on progressing as we go along. So perhaps then these are 4 considerations for any good approach to developing a policy in this. Looking at philosophical foundations. For many of us, this can be different. Whether we are looking at Ubuntu, Moto ke moto kabato, I am because we are, or sharing is caring, or we can go down to very normative foundations as to how do we interpret texts or policies. Aristotle made a very good point saying that we cannot teach ethics. You can't go sit in this, and I think by the time we all leave this venue, we can't say, oh, I'm an ethical person right now. Okay, so ethics is a practice or a habituation of virtue. So the more we do it, the better we get at it, which is why it is really helpful if we consider philosophical foundations. Intercultural information ethics looks at how information and communication technologies impact us differently in different ways. How we use it in South Africa, or in Kenya, or in the UK, or in Israel, or in the United States is different. So technologies impact us in different ways, but we also utilize technologies in different ways. This is where the crux now comes in for global considerations. UNESCO has got amazing guidelines known as the recommendations for the ethics of AI. It's probably one of the best approaches towards guiding policies and having recommendations in place. But this project took years in the making, millions of dollars, and so many people involved. Now, I'm quite sure none of us have got those same resources within our organizations. So if we are dealing with certain considerations, we're always thinking, I have to keep in mind that the values or the policies and the information we receive is predominantly from a Western context and might not speak to what we view as being important. So for me, as an example, I feel very important about care, the notion of care. I know we can get duty ethics or deontological ethics. We can get consequentialism, utilitarian ethics. But I'm concerned about caring for others, and I'm concerned about community. Now, Ubuntu, for example, is well known for the notion of dealing with communities and caring about the other person. But once we need to consider whose values, it becomes tricky, right? How do we go and conceptualize and categorize our values? So everybody that's on your phones that want to make as though you're listening to me, but you're actually doing something else, you are really more than welcome to go and Google the World Values Survey. It's an amazing instrument to guide any person to develop something that's representative of you, representative of us, representative of your country, and then towards an AI ethics policy. So as an example, critical hermeneutics, you don't have to go in depth, but it is concerned with looking at the socio-political context in which we are engaging in. So we all know that there are these push and pull factors within media, within politics, that's influencing us. So if we know what are the socio-political considerations within our own environments, we can know how to best counter or address it. So that for me is, for example, an interesting approach. Hermeneutics is concerned with interpretation and dialogue. So how then do we foster dialogue amongst ourselves within our environments? I've already touched on intercultural information ethics. So it becomes incumbent on us to acknowledge how we use technology in a different way and how technology impacts us in different ways. Now I can't remember, but this thingy that they make us do and respond to the questions online, there was this question, what does technology do to society and what does society do to technology? This is exactly what intercultural information ethics is looking into. I've already gave a breakdown of the World Values Survey. The 7th wave finished, and they're busy releasing data sets. So more than 100,000 people have been engaged in this survey, over 100 countries. And I can tell you the variables are immense. It's more than 900 different variables according to which the values are mapped. An amazing thing of the World Values Survey that is different from UNESCO's recommendations or different from the Institute for Electronic and Electrical Engineers initiatives is that they went into rural communities. They did the questionnaires within local languages. So this is not just like with the Hofstede's, Gert Hofstede's study on intercultural communication that only did it in English. This is representative of local languages and looking at representative of local religions and value systems. So this is a very nifty tool. You can select your country. Most countries have engaged in this to some extent, and you can see the breakdowns and you can compare it with one another. And then policies. Once we look at this whole ecosystem, we must be aware that there are policies that have things that we agree, the convergences or the similarities, but there are also elements that make us unique. Maha mentioned in her session in our workshop yesterday that yes, we are all different, but we do have similarities that connect us and bring us together. That's a bit of a slogan. We all have unique in common. Okay, maybe remember that. We all have unique in common. So issues of privacy, access, accuracy, security, and confidentiality, no matter if you're African or Chinese or American, those issues are important to all of us. But then we also have other items that could portray us what we value. So maybe religion is something that features really highly within your own society. These are the 4 grounding approaches that you could consider if you take it back home to develop a policy that you would like to consider. These approaches looks at the entire ecosystem. How do you ground it? What are the ethics principles? What are the values? And how do we bring it into a policy? So that's actually quite straightforward, those different components. How then do we develop an AI ethics policy? Very systematically. We need to look at why do we have the policy and the need for it. Okay, we're all dealing with ICTs. We have issues with literacy, or we have issues of ethics and ethical dilemmas, as Judith's video showed. This person, Jude, I mean, who thinks he should have walked away? Should Jude have walked away? Oh, no. Either you're not listening or you think he should have stayed. That's sad. Okay, so Jude should have walked away, and he didn't. So maybe it was getting a job, right? So how easy is it for us then to be manipulated to think, let's turn a blind eye because we don't want to make those hard decisions. So suddenly we all lose our values and our religious beliefs because we're more interested in money or stability. I'm going to show you a framework that you can consider. It might look very complex, so please take a photo of the framework, and then I will be sharing in our WhatsApp group additional reading that you could follow. See, that is quite difficult to see on this screen. But quickly, just to point it out to you, you'll see there is a yellow dots, 1, 2, 3, and 4. To develop an AI ethics policy that is inclusive of our value systems is the starting point, number 1. Number 2 are the different socio-economic contexts of our organization, of our school, of our media house, or of our country that we must consider. And these include our intercultural considerations. These include policy considerations, and they include different value considerations. Once you've taken your photo and you zoom into it, you will see intercultural considerations is in this mint green. At the top left, we have a mint green box that speaks about our perceptions of life and how it influences us. It speaks about how do we feel about our jobs and job security. Jude was more concerned about having job security than behaving in a moral way. And his mom said, Jude, I know you're going to make the right decision. Did Jude make the right decision? Yes? No? No, why are you saying Jude made the right decision?
I said it depends. Well, you know, sometimes surviving is religious morality.
Wow. Thank you so much for that, Addie. That's right. That's scary though. It's an honest answer, right? We need to survive. But does that justify for people to be hurt? Money to be stolen? A person to be hit until he releases all the names? Right? But that's the justification. Do you choose between acting right or making sure your children have got food on the table? These are ethical dilemmas that we've got. And then different value considerations, as you can see in the pink, are what are the convergent values, the things that we share? What are the divergent values that makes us unique? And then how do we expand our value systems within our local communities that may not be from a global north or a western perspective, but that looks at our own community needs? What are the policy outcomes? You can't see it very clearly, but it's about creating awareness on ethics and intercultural information ethics. It is about looking at ethical behavior and decision making. So maybe if Jude had a class on ethics, he would have gone through a couple of tick boxes and like, well, my mom won't like this. I usually ask myself, what would my mom say if I do something? And then if I know my parents will be disappointed, then I don't do it. So that's a good check for us to have. And then finally, it's mitigating the risks and the challenges that we are facing by emerging technologies. That's why we have policies. Policies and a code of conduct or a code of ethics is to guide good behavior and to give us a guideline and a framework to help us make proper decisions. That's essentially what it boils down to. And then finally, if we look at this entire ecosystem and we take it back home, we ought to be able to systematically design some form of an ethics code of conduct. And I hope that's something that you consider doing when you go back home, because I'm quite sure at the speed and the rapid advancements of technologies and the spread of information, we will require this ever more. So yes, it's all of our responsibilities, from governments to big tech organizations, to teachers, to lecturers, for journalists. We must consider how our actions are influencing others. We can't just sit back and be recipients of what others decide what is right and wrong. It is up to us to establish what we feel is right and wrong in these contexts. We do need collaboration, and I think collaboration and participation, Madam Chair Ora, I remember participation was number 2 of what you told us. Okay, so we need to collaborate and participate together when we are considering these ethics challenges in digital age, which is essentially why we are all here, sharing our experiences. And then in the end is to make sure that we consider our cultural values and what is important to us so that we can convey to others what we view as being important. I think we can all agree with the concluding points. We know technologies are impacting us. We know there are concerns. The panel over here in terms of media and information literacy have highlighted that extremely well, and in all the presentations yesterday. We know that children are being faced on TikTok or wherever, whether it's trolling or cyberbullying, whether there's different forms of sexual harassment, or information that is just untrue. We are seeing it with deep fakes. My mom is sharing, I think, Wally, we're all using our moms as examples. But my mom has been sharing interpretations of the Israel-Gaza war with me, and it's all Facebook videos. And many of them are computer generated. And I'm like, Mom, why don't you watch CNN and BBC World and Al Jazeera, and then you triangulate your information? And she's like, no, I like Facebook, I trust Facebook. And I'm like, I'm your child. This is what I do. And I'm telling my mom, don't watch Facebook videos with AI-generated images. But she trusts Facebook as a source of trustworthy information. And then having inclusive intercultural dialogues amongst ourselves. So I just want to thank DCN for bringing us all together, where we can engage and communicate on these topics. Because without this, we will continue being insular within our silos and not learning from each other, but we'll be also duplicating. We don't have enough resources. I mean, if we did, we would be all rich and be wearing jackets and not get cold from the aircon. So it's best for us to collaborate in these instances. And yes, we are talking about AI now, but we are aware that emerging technologies are just going to keep on expanding very rapidly. And we need to be preemptive and proactive. We don't want to wait for something to happen and then become reactive, which is why, again, policies are important. They are proactive measures. If you have any questions on media and information literacy, please ask Alex, Blaise, Maha, and Wally. If you have any questions on ethics, please ask Daniel. And then if you want more information, please join the workshop later, where we are looking at integrating more competencies and ethics considerations into civil society organizations. Madam Chair, you didn't start chasing me. Am I done? Can I drop the mic now?
Wonderful. As introduced, my name is Michael Kalua. I'm a senior reporter at Phoenix FM in Zambia, and I will be your moderator for this panel discussion on fact-checking. My panel has already been introduced to you, so without further ado, we'll definitely get into the discussion on fact-checking. And really, just to get us going, we're going to discuss a lot of issues about fact-checking in Africa based on the perspectives of these, panelists here. First up, Lee, I'd like you to, put us through what fact-checking is and really what the status of fact-checking in Africa currently is. No matter, you can use your perspective on this one.
All right. Hello, everyone. I think I've learned my lesson. Next time I'll bring my own delegation so that I have my cheering squad as I come on stage, right? But yeah, I'm the chief editor of Africa Check. So we work in 4 African countries: Kenya, Nigeria, South Africa, and Senegal. And what we do is we look to improve the quality of public debate in the media and in society generally. And so that really is the essence of fact checking, to make sure that the information that people are using to make decisions, either individually or at a society level, is something that is credible, that you can use. Someone spoke about information integrity yesterday, right? But in terms of the landscape of fact checking on the continent, it's very vibrant. Globally, maybe I could start at the global level. There, last I checked, about 2 days back, there are about 420 fact-checking organizations globally, which you would say are active, and about 130 are inactive. Of these 420, about 50 are in Africa. And the growth of these organizations has come in the last 5 years. One, obviously, as a consequence of the pandemic, but also there was a heightened awareness about the issues of misinformation and disinformation coming from the Brexit election in the UK and the US election, Brexit referendum rather. And so the majority of these 50 fact-checking organizations of the continent are independent. There are some that are housed in media houses, for example, AFP, and others have linkages with academic institutions, but the majority are independent and look to raise their own resources, which obviously then speaks to the challenge of fact-checking on the continent, which is a lack of resources, because it is quite time-consuming, it is quite tedious. So resources tends to be a challenge for many organizations on the continent. And also there's the question or challenge of the digital divide. We've heard a lot about internet penetration on the continent, but by far most communities of the continent are still offline, right? And actually that is the nature of misinformation, disinformation on the continent. It's very much offline at the moment, and so the digital divide is an issue that a lot of fact-checking organizations of the continent have to deal with. And of course, operating in a multicultural, multilingual environment is also a challenge for many, because a lot of the information data we have is very much in English, right? And we are not even speaking of the challenges of polarization, of censorship, of regimes that obviously do not want engaged and informed citizenry. So there's a lot that fact-checking organizations of the continent have to contend with, but it's a very vibrant environment, and we've seen a lot of linkages, a lot of collaborations, a lot of innovations, which I'm sure my panelists will speak to.
Absolutely. I pick one thing that you highlighted, which is to do with misinformation and disinformation. And Tracy, I would like for you to delve into the importance of fact checking to deal with the growing misinformation and disinformation in Africa.
Okay, I'm Gifty Tracy Aminu. I work with Factspace West Africa. We are focused in 5 countries: Ghana, Gambia, Sierra Leone, Nigeria, and Liberia. So we see the importance of fact checking, because we don't want bad actors to share information that will undermine our democracy, that will threaten our public health system, that will undermine our security and peace. So it's very important to fact check claims. So usually what we do is we monitor traditional media and social media, because we realize that the politicians, the powerful in society, ride on the availability of influencers and the availability of social media to send out information or claims that would undermine this institution. So, for instance, in COVID, there were a lot of misinformation about COVID, and my organization was dedicated to fact checking claims. And during the COVID times, we made a lot of alliance, and we realized that it's not just about the mere person on the street that spread information. We realized that even the journalists themselves, the gatekeepers of information were part of spreading this information. And I realized, I remember I did a story on a journalist who went to Twitter and shared, I'm not taking the vaccine because my doctor said if I take it, it will lead to infertility. It was big, and with the number of followers she had on Twitter, we realized that that's going to undermine our public health system and our efforts for people to take up the vaccine. And we went ahead and do it, and of course, she called trolls and others on us. And that's just like one of the things that happens. So it's important. And I remember the 2020 elections, there was a doctored video of the EC calling the election for the opposition party, and as at the time, we have not collected our results. So such it could easily trigger conflict and could lead to things that we don't expect even before the results are out. So it's very important that we as fact checkers are consistent. We take our credibility serious, and we make sure we don't go in with our scripts and come back again with corrections. So it's very important because we are more of gatekeepers of our democracy, our public health system, and other systems that matters to us.
Wonderful insights. For Zambia, we had a narrative that once you get the COVID vaccine, you turn into a cat after 3 years. I'm waiting for I'm in the third year, so in case before this conference ends and I look like a cat, you have an idea why. Anyhow, I'll move on to Bilal, and perhaps you could, look at who should fact check, why, and how, and also as you identify this person that should partake in fact checking. What is the importance of collaboration in fact checking?
Well, thank you. Who should fact check and why? Why is it important to fact check? It's important to fact check the claims that circulate on internet in the traditional media because people need to get access to accurate information, to real facts and not fictions. Let me just take the example of climate change. There are a lot of conspiracy theories circulating around climate change. So all these theories are hindering the efforts to tackle the scourge. While with proper fact checking, people will get the accurate information at the end to make the right decision to tackle the issue. So it's key important to fact check the claims that are circulated. And when it comes to fact checking, my friend here stressed the importance of credibility. Fake news, let me call it like that, fake news, all types of falsehoods, it goes beyond the scope of only one organization and only one country. This is where collaboration is key to be able to take the challenge, to meet the challenge. And let me give you an example of the African Fact-Checking Alliance that I'm currently coordinating at Good for Africa. It's an alliance that encompasses 350 plus members. We have newsrooms, we have CSOs, we are aiming to have some universities and any other, key player of the field. Why is it important? For instance, it will enable the fact checkers to overcome some of the major challenges that they encounter while performing the fact checking task. For instance, the access to the sources. it's much easier for a local fact checker to reach out to his authorities than Bilal, for instance, who is based in Senegal. If I want to fact check a claim that concerns Niger, for instance. So this network, this community, is a kind of database into which I can tap into. I can reach out to a fellow that is based in Niger to ask him to get in touch with Niger authorities to get the right information. Let me give you an example. I have a friend, a Togolese friend here, who was wanting to interview one ministry in Togo. He couldn't. Despite all his efforts, he couldn't. What he finally did, he went to Ghana, purchased a SIM card, and then called back to introduced himself as a Ghanaian journalist, and then he was able to have his interview with the police minister. And being member of AFCA will provide you with some advantages, such like you will get access to top-notch tools to fact check, you will get access to trainings, to MOOCs. There are some seed grants that are available to help you either strengthen your fact checking initiative or to launch your fact checking initiative, and there are many other advantages. It's free of charge. All those ones that are here are welcome to join the alliance so that we can, have a coordinated action against this disinformation scope. My final word will be corruption. We are 6 years to 2030, and Africa must meet the SDGs. And we cannot meet the SDGs in a world, where disinformation is ruling everything. And this is a cross-cutting issue, actually. It's not specific targeting a topic like climate change, etc. It concerns all the fields nowadays. There is disinformation in sport, in economy, in politics, in climate change, in health, everything, agriculture. So we need to give it a lot of importance, even much better than what is currently observed when it comes to other issues like climate change, like food security, etc. Thank you.
Wonderful. The U.S. Embassy, Zambia Public Affairs Officer yesterday noted, how misinformation and disinformation is posing a threat to democracy in Africa. And indeed, it calls for collaborations. And as you rightly put it, I think everybody has heard, we need to take, that opportunity up and continue with our fact checking. Thank you, Bilal. Talking about governance issues, Silas, I know everything as we embrace the digital space. It borders on governance, social, and economic issues. How important is fact checking, with regards to the governance, social, and economic issues?
Well, it's a pleasure to be here. This seat makes me feel like a celebrity, by the way. I feel like I'm a king. You guys, just by the way, anyway. But when you think about fact checking in governance, what first comes to mind is accountability. And fact checking is the only aspect of journalism that responds fast to holding people accountable, not just to what they promise, but to what they say. That's one aspect. That's one aspect. And again, if you also want to look at the area of policy, the area of project implementation, fact checking also comes to play in governance. And this is how. So, a minister in Nigeria took some money to build a road, and the road is in a very remote location, and he said, "This is how much I spent on the road." He took some pictures of the road, and it was in the newspaper and Twitter. Everybody was commending him. Oh, good work! The road is perfect. But when I look at the road, I've been to the village, and the terrain doesn't seem to sing along with that. And when I checked the picture, I found out that it was from Brazil. The road is from Brazil. And I went to the village, I saw that it was just a tiny road, not the same in the one in the pictures. So the minister had so much backlash. He was taken out of office and the money was retrieved. You could see that it was just fact checking, just doing a reverse image search that is so common. But it cost someone their work because they weren't accountable. And also, when you also come back to the aspect of budget expenditure in governance, we see that a lot of times governments say, this is how much we've spent, or this is how much we've done on that. Generally, if you look at it, it is fact checking that holds all these people responsible. And lastly, uh, during elections in Sierra Leone, I was in Sierra Leone, I was in Ghana, there's elections recently in Liberia, and then Nigerian elections, we had politicians saying, oh, you could go and fact check me. They say something and they're like, oh, you could go and fact check me. This is not something that was there some 5 years ago, but then now they're speaking, they would say, go check the numbers, go check me. So if you look at it, I would say that the centrality or the nexus between governance and fact checking is simply accountability. Thank you.
Politicians tend to make the wildest of claims. For you, it was a road from Brazil. In the Zambian context, our former head of state posted pictures from construction of the road in Nigeria. And within 3 days, he had to delete the post because journalists went all out and, reminded him to say there's no such construction ongoing in Zambia. And that's the power of, fact checking. One of the other issues that comes out of, governance matters when we talk about, fact checking, accountability and all is conflict. And from an Ethiopian perspective, I don't know, but what is the importance really of fact checking during conflict?
Well, from experience, of course, it's really important because most of the people, usually in today's age, rely on Facebook because they don't trust the traditional media or the mainstream media. So, however, they don't have the media literacy, so they assume that the ultimate truth comes from Facebook, right? But they don't even know that people are the one who create the message on Facebook. So it's really important. However, during the past 3 days, 3 years, when the famous war in Ethiopia, the Tigray conflict started, most of the fact-checking work also started. Fact-checking is a new field for Ethiopians. So everything we fact check, almost like more than 80% of our fact checking is about war, about conflict, and not only in Tigray but other regions as well. The thing is, there are over 110 million people in Ethiopia, and there are only 10 fact checkers in Ethiopia. Uh, from the 10 out of the 10, some are part-time and some are becoming independent and the consultants like me. Some work for Code for Africa, only one work for AFP, and the others are local. And as you can see, you can understand how challenging it is. So let me focus on the challenge of fact checking during a conflict, especially in times like that, in terms of Ethiopian context. So one of the challenges, of course, access to information. During the presentations yesterday, the name of Ethiopia was being mentioned again and again, especially related with internet shutdowns and the war. So without data and without access to information, you can't fact check, right? You can't find the evidence. So one of the major challenge for the 10 fact checkers is access to information. Even if you want to go to some place and check for yourself, there is war, like you can't pass or something like that. So access to information is the major challenge. The other one is especially during conflicts and war, of course, freedom of expression is really limited. There are a lot of journalists being arrested because of covering the conflicts, because of what they say and all that. So freedom of expression is also in question. Uh, Additionally, as I say, there is shortage of also resource and skill. Of course, we get trainings from Africa Check, PESA Check, I mean, Code for Africa, and other international organizations. But since there are not that many professionals in that field, most of the time there is a shortage of localization. Like we couldn't localize it in a way that works for Ethiopia. So most of the fact checks are like this image is false, this image is true, and during conflicts. Of course, checking the image is important, but people want to know, okay, if the image is not right, what's right, right? What's the situation like? How many people died? Or something like that. And we don't usually have the answer because we only rely on those tools and that's the only access we have. Uh, Additionally, let me just add this one. So I saw on DCN social media platform yesterday a content about war anxiety and how conflict can affect mental health of media users and how they should limit their media usage, something like that. However, imagine it like it's your job to see this kind of horrible graphics, always days or conflicts, human rights issues, and all that. So, one of the major challenges in Ethiopia is also vicarious drama for journalists and both fact checkers because all our social media content, almost not all, but most of our social media contents are about war, about those unfairness, and sometimes we feel like we're not doing enough. Like, what's the point of doing all that? So vicarious trauma and mental health problems are one of the reasons why many fact checkers are not doing their job. I mean, are not joining this course and also are not continuing. Some of them, as I said, are like part-time workers because they don't want to be stressed out. They don't want to feel the pain of other people. Like, why? Why would I? So there are a lot of challenges, and I think what would be the solution will be a homework for all of us. Like not only in Ethiopia, but there are conflicts in Israel and Gaza, and the war in Ukraine and Russia, is also like an example. So what should we do, and how should we support fact checkers during times like that? Should be a homework for all of us. And I'm also running a workshop in the afternoon about mental health for fact checkers and journalists as well. So that's all. Thank you.
Okay, so there is an advert. There's a workshop in the afternoon. Look out for that one. Obviously, once we do our fact checking and we go through all the paces, we need this information to go out to the people. And Sisanda has very interesting perspectives on some of the tools that we can use for engagement, within the digital space. Sisanda, I know I send a lot of messages to friends on WhatsApp. How am I going to use WhatsApp to get relevance to our discussion?
So I think the one thing that stood out today is that a lot of misinformation is spread by WhatsApp. A lot of people have said, my mom loves forwarded messages, and before verifying that information, it's so easy to just send it out. And what we've done at Code for Africa, so we have a fact-checking initiative called PESA Check. It was actually one of the first indigenous fact-checking initiatives in East Africa. And we are now in over 16 countries on the continent, and we are fact-checking this all over, and not only focusing on English and French content, we're now actually moving on to other languages like Amharic and Swahili to kind of get people with the languages that they understand, because I think when you speak to people in their mother tongue, it's easier for them to kind of connect. So one of the platforms that we've noticed is extremely important or is easy to reach people has been WhatsApp. So we have something called the WhatsApp tip line, where regular people can basically send a claim. So you find something, your mom sends you that forwarded message and says, hey, look at what's happening here. You can then send that claim to our tip line, and one of our fact checkers on the ground will then do the work using various tools to see if that claim is in fact factual or not true. So it kind of gives you power, and it gives you valuable information that's actually accurate before you send out whatever information you're getting via these social media platforms. And through WhatsApp as well, it's not only one way where people are sending us tips or claims, rather, we're also now making sure that we are sharing information. So whatever claims we're finding and we're debunking, we then kind of collate a newsletter each week, and we kind of take the most prevalent debunks that we found throughout that week, and we send them out to whoever has opted in into our WhatsApp tip line as well. So I think using platforms where people are, I think it's important for us to go to where the people are and not say, I think it's great that we have fact checkers and fact checking desks, but as a regular person, how do I know that, there is an actor? I think it's important for us to go to the people and say, especially during times when misinformation is most likely to be spread during elections, it's important for us to say, okay, so these are the places that you can go to, or these are the tools and the people that you can ask to assist you in ensuring that the information that you're sharing is accurate. I mean, most of the people that have opted into our tip line and our newsletter, we found on our social media platforms. So they are there, the users are there. It's just ensuring that you're using what you already have to access the right people and ensure that they're getting the right kind of information. So I think people really underestimate what can be done with platforms or tools like WhatsApp. I think recently they just launched something called Channels, and that's also allowed us now to reach a wider audience and communicate what is true and what is not. So I think we need to start thinking differently about how people are fact checking as well. I don't think it's just up to fact checkers to check information. I think when you have asked Bilal, like, whose responsibility is it to fact check? I think it's everybody's responsibility. If you're sharing information, it's your responsibility to fact check it. So one of the things that we do as well is share the different tools that fact checkers would use and explain how you would actually use those tools to ensure that the information that you're receiving is true. So I don't think it's a matter of waiting for fact checkers or people that are qualified to look for information or to verify information to do so. I think it's important for us to start educating just the general public on how to do so themselves by giving them the same tools that you'll be giving the fact checkers on the ground. So I think something else that's wonderful that we do is have fact-checking courses for newsrooms. I think, we assume that in a newsroom, when we get something, it's factual. There are sub-editors, there are people that are supposed to be there to ensure that information is factual, but I think a lot gets missed because of the kind of space that we're in the media. Everybody wants to be first to share information. I think it's important and pivotal that newsrooms either get trained in fact-checking or there are actual fact-checking desks within those spaces to ensure that, information that's being shared is accurate. So check us out on PesaCheck.org or on our Twitter and Facebook. And there you can then find links to join our WhatsApp tip line where we can share information and educate about the different tools within fact-checking as well.
From fact-checking within conflict, governance issues, collaborations, who should fact-check the tools that we are using? Ladies and gentlemen, this was the panel discussion on fact-checking, and of course, I wish we had more time. Unfortunately, we've run out, and so we have to pave way for the next part of the program. So on behalf of Bilal, Lee, Tracy, Silas, Rehoboth, and Sisanga, my name is Michael Kaluma. I was happy to host this part of the program for you.
This is so much fun. First of all, before I get into the nooks and crannies, I always like to record myself so that, because when I've been checking today, we've been hearing that moms are the purveyors of, fake news. The dads have not been mentioned, by the way. That means shout out to the dads. We're not sending kids fake news, so shout out to the dads. Any dads in here? Okay, it's just, I think the reason why guys don't say fake news is because they don't really use their phones that well. So let's not get any cops. How many of you in here actually run their own business? Okay, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4. How many of you have tried to run a business? Okay. And how many of you here, it's a very important question, have a side gig? A side hustle. So everybody's got a side hustle. I want to tell you something very important about yourself. There's no such thing as a side hustle. If you look at this, these are some of my brands. I don't know how to fit all my brands in there. So I've got the website, I've got the budding TV channel, I've got one other podcast, I've got another podcast, I've got a book now. All those things are related to my digitalpreneur journey. So to get ourselves started, we're going to find the clicker. The clicker is over here. I guess I have to get to that. I guess I have to tell you who I am. So I'm a person who was born in 1981, just after independence. And I'm a product of an education system that said, you need to go to school, do a lot of reading, do a lot of understanding what's happening out there in the world. And I read a lot of books, and that's how I discovered the world. And in my discovering the world, I decided to start writing, because I figured if Charles Dickens could write, I could write too. Not as well as he did, but at least I could write a story. And as my journey continued, I went and studied all sorts of things, from mathematics to science and that sort of thing, and then proceeded to go into different ventures that went into advertising, working for other people. I even started a rock band. I performed poetry. All of this is part of a journey in as far as storytelling about my own life. Why all of this is important is that it's critical to my digital entrepreneurship journey. My digital entrepreneurship journey is very simple. I needed to solve a problem. The problem was, around 2008, Zimbabwe news was being broadcast a day afterwards. So an event would happen today, and you only find out the day after. So what we did was to say, what if we wrote the news on that particular day? And that was the critical aspect of what you call it, of my digitalpreneurship journey, solving the problem based on what my need was. And you find it as far as the state of digitalpreneurship in Africa, it is predicated on the fact that a lot of our solutions are happening at source. People are dealing with digital solutions at source. But why I decided to make this slide is because a lot of people understand the digi part, but not the preneurship part. So there are a lot of people who are creating amazing apps, amazing websites, amazing things and technology and so forth, but then they're not nascent in the space that they want to deal with. So you come up with a great app that actually doesn't solve the problem. And the concept of an entrepreneur is predicated on one simple thing. You need to keep working your way out of a job. I'll say that again. You need to work your way out of a job. Somebody within a year should be replacing what you are doing today within your own organization. And that's what a lot of our digipreneurs in Africa have been suffering from. That you find that the entrepreneur, or rather the digipreneur that doesn't work on the concept, has to be there, has to be the one who's delivering things, has to be the one who's who's doing everything that they did from the beginning of the business. Now, my slides are very short, so when I get to what next, I'm going to open up to the floor. If you have any specific question as far as what you can do with your business, I'd like to quickly answer them. So in the next 3-4 minutes, I'll be done with my slide presentation. Now, looking at now African digital nation, these are some of the critical disruptive areas that digital leadership is done. The different payment systems, payment gateways, agri-tech. And I speak about agri-tech. One of my friends in the back there is Kudam Sasiwa. He started a very simple business. Our grandmothers and our mothers used to sit on the corner and they used to sell vegetables. And that's when you go and you want to collect your vegetables, you want them fresh and so forth. So he started a business called Fresh in the Box. What if I come and deliver those vegetables to your house? Not only that, I want to make it so that your relatives in the diaspora can pay for your vegetables and they get delivered to your house. So you don't really need to handle anybody. If you're having to buy vegetables for your mom, she doesn't have to go and queue somewhere and get money and then go to the shops and try and buy it. That was a disruptor in the business model. And then as far as the entrepreneurship journey, he's able to sit in this conference here and know the deliveries I have. Not that he's sitting and is not looking, but he worked himself out of that job. From being the person who delivers to being the one who creates the what's next, whether it's franchising, whether it's developing a new business system. And we can extensively talk about the different e-commerce platforms that have come out of Africa. There's been a great acceleration. I think a period of 2016 was one of the periods in which there was a lot of excitement. That's when buzzwords like Africa Rising were coming through. And also, in as far as education systems, COVID-19 was a big accelerator because now kids had to learn from home and you had to develop different solutions. And I think people in Zimbabwe will identify and spit on the statement called color. Parents realize that school is hard. And those who didn't like paying school fees are like, oh, teachers really need to get paid. But when teachers used to complain, you'd be like, oh, this is easy. Anyone can do teaching, until you had to suddenly teach your own child. Now, what has been the impact of digital leadership in Africa? Job creation. I've got a team of 6, and then our consultants, it goes up to 16. Those are people whose food, who I'm feeding, whose extended families I'm feeding. Those are people who are making a livelihood. And as far as evolving experience, what happens is that wherever a lot of our businesses have started, they have moved forward with the technology. And one of the things that startups have an advantage of is that they've got lean, agile systems. If you're running a platform and it suddenly has new features, you don't need to go and get permission from the higher ups in order to achieve your objectives. And then access to services. The access to services includes getting funding. Tech Cabal released a report, the status of tech. It said in Africa, this past year, African startups raised $853 million US dollars. Of course, it's 42% down from 2022 when they got about 1.4 billion. But it's showing that there is a lot of money, there's a lot of access to services, and then, as I said, problem solving at community level. So, what next? That's a very principal question. One of the key things I want to say to all the entrepreneurs, the budding, the ones thinking about it, the digitalpreneurs, is what you've done in taking that journey, you're doing great already. But what next? One of the key aspects in as far as digitalpreneurship from an African perspective is understanding your local conditions. And when I say local conditions, I mean local, super local conditions. Even in Harare, when I'm doing a business deal in another part of the country, I have to cognizant of price points that are relative to those spaces. So while you'd like to think of yourself as trying to get into or go into African adventure, what you have to really focus on is super actualizing at source. If you can get a lot of your product at source to move to another space, do that. So let's say, for example, again, let's give example that you're meat processing. Instead of finding it from a source that is 500 kilometers away, if you can get a partner that's super local, that means your price point is a lot lower. And you're able to give a better service. That's number one. Number two, deliver. Number three, a very important one, when we start the business, even if you're on your own, the first person you're supposed to hire is an accountant. Even if somebody's looking at your books once a month, because you need to deal with compliance. Because it's nice when the money's just coming in, when Mr. Taxman is going to come to you in a couple of months and say, yo, let's go back and look at your books. And that's where a lot of businesses fail. And then thirdly, reinvestment. So it's all very well being able to raise the 853 million, but how much of it is going into the business? A lot of businesses take the money, they get the $100 and they buy a car. Because the business owner must have an expensive car. Very good. But then the question is, who owns the asset? The asset cannot be owned by you personally. It has to be owned by the company. Your rent, if you're, Kodai always talks about this, you're a human being, why are you paying rent? Your company should pay your rent. So that way your tax points in your organization start changing. You can depreciate whatever you have, even if it's a camera, you can depreciate its value over time. So those are the little basic things when I say what makes world for. So it's now where digitalpreneurship needs to go to, if it needs to start acting like a grown-up. We now need to go into those spaces where we need to actually fix problems, not just think of the money. So that ends this part of my presentation. In the next 5 minutes, I'd like to answer anybody who's got any questions about how, if they've got their business and they've got another concern that they have, I would really love to answer some of those questions. So if you're trying to go to the next stage. Anyone? No? Everybody's happy with their business?
Thank you very much. This is very great, Larry. My name is Tuli from Tanzania. I like the part when you mentioned that when you were explaining the concept about digi entrepreneurship, is that most of people think about digi and forget that part of entrepreneurship. So my question is that, of course, we understand most of these great products, applications for instance, they come from ideas from very great developers that always forget to keep in place or plan about sustainability and growth. So my question now is that, for instance, there are developers out here, other people online who are actually following, and they already have these great apps, and of course they're now stuck. They don't know what to do because they don't have these business systems in place. What do you advise them now to go about it and make sure that they still have these apps and then they keep on maintaining them until they now get into having a good business system that they can help them grow and become sustainable? Thank you.
Your name again, sorry?
Tuli from Tanzania, yes.
Tuli from Tanzania.
Yes.
Great question. Thank you very much for the question. Key aspect of being a great entrepreneur is knowing what you are good at and what you're rubbish at. I'm rubbish at accounting, so I'm an accountant. I'll just look at figures and I'll say, just pay for it. Like, no, this is not going to make sense. So what that person needs to do is, if you're going to give the aspect of, say, a musician, you need to get a manager, a business manager, someone who has the skills that you don't have. You sit down with them and you say, this is what I'd like to achieve, this is the vision. They will say, okay, maybe if we start with 15% of that idea being implemented today, and look at ourselves at getting to 100% of that idea by end of next year. So we can then look at targeting, what in 6 months where you're supposed to be. In another 6 months where you're supposed to be. Because what you don't want to do is spend $5,000 building these amazing things and still have not made any money after a year. So maybe you want to spend $500 and say, this is what I'm going to work. Get something that's functional, that's tradable, and then move on to adding more features on it. So think of it like how platforms like Facebook, they're continually adding new features. So even the idea of adding new features, you can go from creating a free version, then you can go the X nodes version where you've got a premium version or a freemium version and that sort of thing. So that way you're able to create a product that continually evolves and get to where you want to go to. Can we, one more question?
You got 2 minutes? Okay, one more.
Okay, over there, okay, both of you can ask, then answer at this way. So both of you can ask the question and I can answer them at once.
Thank you. My name is Moses from Zambia. So right now, there's a popular aspect of doing business. I want to talk about my business so that maybe you can give some insights on maybe how I can develop my business. I run a hybrid kind of business. So partly it's a social enterprise, and on the other hand, we are trying to actually be a business and make some money. So the problem is that the people we serve or the people we deal with are usually people that are unable to pay for the services we offer. So we are in the financial inclusion space where we provide digital tools for low-income communities and unbanked communities so that they can also access some of the financial services, some of the tools that can help them become financially included. So as an experienced entrepreneur, what advice can you give me? Because really it's a hassle to get or to force people who are unable to pay for the services to pay. But we still need to, provide these services to them. So what advice can you give a person who is running maybe social enterprise or a hybrid business like what we do? Thank you.
This question, and answer them quickly.
Thank you. I'm Taro Johnson from Liberia. Thank you, Larry, for such a presentation. We are grateful. Now, the issue of funding in Africa is a challenge. Most banks, when you approach them as an entrepreneur, will ask for collateral. You don't have that as a business startup organization. What do you do then?
I like both questions for the fact that they're all about money. So quickly to answer those questions. Moses, it's good. I have to understand what kind of product that you're selling. So one of the things that I think is difficult in as far as accessing people is the digital divide. So back in Zimbabwe, people think the internet is WhatsApp. So you have to find ways to access the customer. The most difficult thing for most people is accessing the person. And as far as how you can then price things, a lot of it will have to do with government policy or the local policy. That's why I say if you superannuate to where you're trading in, what the variable results is that you can get someone to deal with the space between where people can afford and where your pricing is. So maybe you're going to look for a volume-based business, so therefore you can start at a lower level, or we have a premium version of the business in which a lot of people can pay for it, and then those who can pay less can get a different version. But so like in certain cities, lower density areas pay a lot more for water, and higher density areas pay a lot less. So that you have to be very specific. Is it something that's physically delivered? That is where you get in touch with people via a digital app, or is it a digital product that you're selling? We're going to have a chat about that so we can figure it out. And the question in finding funding, so it just depends on your business. So for example, one of our products that we were able to create was based on a funding partner, which was an NGO. And what we needed basically was equipment. But when you go and get that funding, you must be aware that whatever you get that funding to must improve your business and get you to sell more products. So that when you get it, you're able to provide other work. So for example, one of the things I tell you is that we've got some cameras and some audio equipment. So we're able to now offer voice-over work. We're able to create jingles and things of that nature. So that means you can now create other revenue streams from whatever funding you get. But if there are so many aspects as far as trying to get funding from the donor partners, and always just be looking for what they're looking for. But ultimately, you must focus on what you're trying to achieve. But we can have a chat on that. If anybody has any other questions, we can have a chat over lunch. But my name is Larry Craig. As I say, from where I come from, I see you, Mr. Sebenza. Take care of yourself.
Thank you, Larry. Another round of applause for Larry. Yeah.
Well, thank you very much, Larry. That was a brilliant presentation. And I just want to start off with a story. Rachel mentioned something about her mother. She said her mother, checks out some information from weird sources. I was in school during Ebola, right? You don't know Ebola. When everybody's feeling like, I don't know what he's talking about. Ebola. So I was in school and my mother called me and she said, oh, Silas, you're going to wake up, you're going to take some salt, put them in water and drink it. Do it for 4 days, 6 a.m., 6 p.m. every day. I was in the dorm, that hostel. And I convinced my roommates and we were doing it, frequently. And thankfully I never got Ebola. I'm still standing here. But I know I have a lot of salt in my system. But that's by the way. We share a common story of being misinformed or disinformed, one way or the other. This is just for me as a person, right? I may have salt issues in the future, but imagine disinformation in a large scale, where it doesn't only threaten someone like me, but threatens a whole nation. This is my name there. I'm Silas Jonathan. I'm the head of digital investigations and research in the Center for Journalism, Innovation and Development. Oh, I like that head. Head makes me feel good. Yeah. So this is not working. This is not working. No. Like down? Okay. I got it. Yes. So there is no doubt that disinformation is a problem. It's a problem because it affects a lot about our lives. But then disinformation is even more a threat to African democracy because our democracy is fragile. Down. Okay, the pressing issue. In 2024, approximately 74 countries, are going to hold elections worldwide, and 15 are going to be from Africa, and that's a lot of number if you look at it. So therefore, fact-checking and media monitoring groups must find effective ways to mitigate the trends of disinformation. The importance of monitoring digital disinformation in Africa during elections. Why do we need to do this? Why? Because when you look at fact checking is an after response, but monitoring is a pre thing that you do to make sure that nothing happens. So I'm going to just quickly rush. We do that so we can protect the integrity of our elections, because election is the pillar of democracy, right? You can be sharing money all the time, but if you're a leader, you can share money all the time, but if there is no elections, then that's not democracy. Of course, there are other things, but I really want to rush. Understanding digital disinformation. Digital disinformation is any kind of disinformation that is shared through a digital means. So what it means is that if it's a word of mouth, that has nothing to do with digital. But digital is digital disinformation is so broad that it can get to a lot of people in a very short time, especially during elections. And these are the three major ones that we have found while monitoring elections. The ones that are forged or fabricated content, content taken out of context, and then content that is partially altered Thankfully, I think I have some examples. So this is a sort of content that we saw during elections in Nigeria. One of the candidates, Peter Obi, his supporters doctored this video and said Hollywood celebrities are keen on supporting him. And a lot of people were saying, wow, if this elder will support Peter Obi, who am I? So partially edited, you could see he's holding the Nigerian flag in some details. Then there is one which is even more dangerous, the one that is forged or fabricated content. It is not partially, it is forged from the ground up. This guy was the media aide to the former president, and he's so popular online, and he shared the results before the results were announced, election results. And a lot of people retweeted it, even some media houses published it. But he deleted it, but I archived it. Sorry, bad for him. Yeah. Yeah. And then there is another one. There is a content that is entirely taken out of context. This is a video that during 2020 elections in Ghana, it came just 5 days to the election, saying Nana Akufo-Addo, that's the current president, was collecting bribes. If you're from Ghana, you know about the video. Let me see your hands. Oh, surely you do. But then the video was taken out of context. It wasn't collecting bribes, has nothing to do with it. In fact, it was from the opposition party. What I'm trying to say here is that in monitoring election disinformation, it is very important that we know what, so that we can be able to track the why. Think about it. So the impact of digital disinformation in Africa is that it has a lot to do with voter turnout. In Nigeria, we have almost 250 million people, but then hardly 30 million people registered for the election, and hardly, I think around 10 million voted. So you could see there is a high number of disenfranchisement, right? Why? I didn't vote. Don't tell them I didn't. But the thing is that I'm scared, or most people are scared, that if you go out, the violence, will break out. And then people were making this even more serious by sharing videos. They pick videos from Ghana, videos from other places, and say, this is what is happening in my polling unit. If you know what's good for you, don't come out. Something like that. And another thing is eroding trust in the electoral process. So people feel, I don't want to even go out. There's so much disinformation that comes in that regard. Say, oh, I don't even want to vote because the vote do not count. Right? And then another thing is damaging the reputation of candidates. Just a week, especially female candidates, just a week to an election, a picture came from nowhere that one of the female candidates was chilling in the club. But it wasn't her picture, it was just someone that looks like her from South Africa. South Africans, club, That's by the way. Inciting electoral violence, some people would say we are Igbos and Yorubas are stopping us from voting, right? And then, you see where is majority Igbos would start attacking Yorubas. Nigeria is ethnically tensed, by the way. Another thing is, let me come back. Another thing is deepening societal divisions, of course. You get the idea. Case studies of digital disinformation. So there's something that happened in 2020 Nigerian election. A month, 6 months to the election, the major candidates were having massive followers on Twitter. It was so massive that, this week you will see they have 100K, next week you see they have 700K. I'm like, how do you get followers like that? So we did an extensive research, and then we found out that most of the followers were bots. Not fake accounts, bots that are just influencing conversation online. If you're from Nigeria, Twitter is a big thing. And Peter Obi had the highest number of bot accounts. You could say that it is explanatory because Peter Obi has a massive youth support. So he might not even be aware, but some youths might just be doing it for him. And of course, you could see, and during the actual election day, we noticed that some of these accounts were sharing fake information, right? And trying to rush. Other instances, during 2023 elections in Sierra Leone, fake Twitter accounts and Facebook groups impersonated key candidates, in the 2021 Gambian elections, there was a coordinated Facebook post spreading disinformation about election rigging. Why go out? I mean, the president will win already, you're wasting your time. And also Kenyan elections, I've spoken with my colleague, there are people who are paid to influence conversations on Twitter or on other social media platforms just to draw oh, this is alarm for my time. Oh, you know why? If you are speaking, the time is short. But if you are listening, it's like it's long. Jesus, what? Let me just round up. Let me round up. Let me just go to some of the techniques that we use, and then I'll round up here. Oh, okay, yeah. So some of the techniques that we do in monitoring electoral disinformation in Africa is research, involving social media networking, typology analysis, distribution analysis to answer the question of what, where, who, how, and why. The 5 W's and H. So let me give you an example. Sometimes we start fact checking just blindly, but we don't do that. We say, okay, let us look at what social media platform attracts the most disinformation. Let us also do research to find out who are the target audiences. Let us also look at what is the interaction level in this kind of social media. It's very important because it will now help you to know where to channel your resources there. And then social media monitoring, which includes active keyword monitoring, tool-based monitoring, maintaining a list of bad actors, and addressing top social media concerns. We also do data analytics to interpret the data and understand trends. I mean, it was just checking followers, and I was concerned. And then it turned out that they were bots. So it was from that. And then fact-checking and verification, pre-bunking strategy. We have an AI tool where we do pre-bunking. So what it means is that we've already written MIL and explainers about the possible questions people would ask. So all they need to do is to just go on that tool. We use OpenAI. You just go there, type the questions, and the answers pop back right in. Of course, collaboration is very key. We knew that working in silence was not going to be effective, so we had a coalition of the Nigerian fact checkers during elections. Also, we have some sort of coalition in Sierra Leone and Gambia, which was effective. And then we have a digital radio monitoring tool now, which we're launching next week, because a lot of disinformation flows on radio that is undetected, and now we have that tool, so it monitors any radio station we want, and then at the end of the day, we have possible claims that need verification, and we have plans to make the tool open to all fact-checking organizations. This doesn't. So you see, this is a typology analysis. We sort of collated a lot of fact checks before the election, so you could do that, so that you could understand. That was before the election, so you could just understand how important what you're doing is. It will also help you. It will also help you to understand what social media should I put my focus on. What social media should I put my focus on? Because I know that in Liberia, people like Facebook. In Gambia, a lot of people like TikTok and a bit of Facebook too. In Nigeria, Twitter is leading. So when you know that, you know how to channel your resources. And then, of course, we need to also look at the interactions. And very importantly, it will also help you to determine what kind of content should I put out there. If there is a TikTok disinformation, you know that if you share text there, you're wasting your time. But a skit will do good, And the category of claimant, you need to also look at it before the elections, combine all the fact checks that you have done that are politically related, do a typology analysis and look at who are those likely to share more disinformation. Is it the candidates? Is it groups? Groups on Facebook were key. And then individuals, is it an influencer or others? So we have the data, and then during the elections, we know who to track and who not to. I'm rounding up now. Building effective monitoring strategies. First, you need to identify key stakeholders. They can be the good, the bad actors, and the good ones. Another thing is collaborative approaches.
with government, civil society, and other fact-checking houses. Very important. See, you need to develop a comprehensive action plan. What social media platforms? Identify the actors, list them out, and very importantly, you need to understand the existing bias in the country. You need to. So in Nigeria, culture doesn't play much, but religion plays a lot. People can vote a dog because of his religious affiliation. Yes. So you see, so you need to understand the biases in the country and that. But lastly, I'm just concluding. There is what I call the Kabuga global strategy of fueling political disinformation. Kabuga, Felician Kabuga, was one of the payees of the Rwandan genocide. And then, Goebbels is Joseph Goebbels is Hitler's chief propagandist. When there is an attempt to influence either his election, democracy, it usually starts with a contradicting ideology. And what happens next is that they choose the most effective medium. Is it going to be TikTok? Is it going to be Facebook? And then the next thing you see is organized propaganda, mixing half-truth and half-lies. And then the next thing is blatant targeted disinformation. And then what you now see at the end is active participation, either negatively or positively. People carrying machetes and killing each other. And then there are lots of tools that we do that. Bot site, Twitter, crowdfunding, keywords. I know keywords, what start, and lessons learned from previous elections. Digital disinformation during election is more organized than you think. The interests and intentions are diverse. It is built on existing biases. And then I wanted us to have something, but come on, leave it out. And you've been a great audience. Thank you. Oh, I'm trying to read that for you. Yeah. Thank you very much, guys. Yeah, follow me on Twitter. Let me get it back.
African round of applause for Jimmy.
Hello, everyone. Sorry, I'm the guy holding you back from your lunch, but I will not take long. I will try and be as swift as possible. The topic says digital surveillance and privacy, but I want to think of surveillance as something in Africa, especially, that has not come with digitization. I want us to think about surveillance, especially privacy, as something that has been with us all along. And perhaps maybe the digital aspect comes from the fact that most of this narrative now is not really driven from African point of view, but it's coming from elsewhere. So I want us to think from that perspective. I'm a teacher. So I don't want to look at this audience as my students. I know what my students are capable of, but I don't know what everyone is capable of here. So I'll be as basic as I can. If I were to ask Aura to say, can we all go, what's the app again? Siron? Yes. Thank you. If I were to say, can every one of us share our passwords to our email? How many of us are going to share? I say, can I have your passwords, please? Are you going to do that? Or are you going to, we're all going to fringe somehow? Really? We all have passwords, we all have PIN codes to our banking systems and whatnot. We have these things what we keep as a secret. We keep things basically to our own, even to our dearest loved ones. There's information that we keep to ourselves. That's aspect of privacy. All of us need a space for our own. We don't shower in public, for example. We always need that closed door at one point or the other. So I want us to be thinking from that perspective. Now, surveillance is not really a public discourse in most African countries. We don't discuss these issues. But this has been with us for a long, long time. For most colonial African states, countries, I come from Malawi, so it's from a British colony. So my perspective is really leaning towards that. We've had fiscal surveillance, for example, for a long time. People are physically being followed, phone tapping, stop and search, physical searches on houses. In most African countries, if you pay attention to your penal code in your country, you find out most of these things are still in our statutes. It can be done. We have things like roadblocks. In Malawi, we have permanent roadblocks, for example. You can count if you want to drive from north to south. All these basically are means of controlling people's movement. Permanent roadblocks, I mean. So we never think about these things as form of surveillance, stop and search. We think it's acceptable because we've been told we need these things for our security. Maybe yes, maybe no. But as it is with our email passwords, we should be able to question why should I be stopped and be searched somehow without being suspected of doing anything. So the coming of new technologies have actually just increased surveillance worldwide. That apart from having that physical stop and search in my country, apart from having that roadblock, now you have invisible measures. We have now ways in which your information, your movements can be monitored without your knowledge. And this can be done largely by our governments, or indeed third parties as well. So surveillance has become a problem in most of the continent. I wish Prophet Muhammad was still here, has moved on. I'm taking this from his publication and his colleague Aaron. So this guy basically points out that there are several countries that are supplying surveillance technologies. And this is where most of us tend to dwell on. We're talking about the digital surveillance. But what has happened here is just the fact that most of us have actually removed ourselves, from our user term, have actually removed ourselves from those physical spaces that we always had to online spaces. And the surveillance that has been there physically also has to move where the people are. So the idea behind surveillance, if you think of it as an idea, has not changed. What has changed is the space, because our spaces are also changing. We now are talking about, for example, digital citizenship. If you have digital citizenship, then you're also going to have digital surveillance, because it's following you from where you're coming on and where you are actually going. Okay, the PowerPoint is gone, but I will run on. So, studies actually have shown that African countries are spending billions in money, US dollars, basically, to buy, to implement surveillance technologies. A lot of money for countries that require a lot of resources for the same money. Why this is happening is because states have to be in control. Now, get me right here. Our government, our states, have to have, by all means, have to have the means of monitoring their citizens. They do so for obvious reasons. For example, public health emergencies. COVID-19 is an example. You need to know, your people, you need to know demographic-wise how to manage these sort of emergencies. They do the same for public security. But in most cases, from colonial period up to now, what we know as surveillance today has been advanced on the basis of national security, our security. That's understandable. In Malawi, where I come from, there's a situation, if I may put it that way, that most of police roadblocks were removed from laws of Malawi, and crime happens. And you have people that are living around these roadblocks complaining that we are now having a lot of crimes around our communities simply because roadblocks have been removed, which is technically not really true. That the connections are not really there. But what I'm trying to say here, basically, is that we have a compliant citizenry because we've been sold this understanding over and over again that you actually need to be monitored in order for us to protect you. So some laws that have been in our status, for example, in Malawi, we've had these vagrant laws that were enacted in 1934, only removed in 2017 when citizens argued against it. The idea was that the police could stop and search you. The police could stop actually and ask you, where are you going? For example, at night, in the evening, and you have to explain yourself. This completely contradicts what the current constitution says. You have the freedom of movement. And if you are suspected of something, you do not owe the police an explanation. They need to tell you what you've done wrong. Okay, so it works the other way around. But these have been there all along. Why? Because the colonial administration had this to control the movements of what they call native Africans. When native Africans took over, we actually replaced the whites or the colonialists, basically, and we did exactly the same thing to control our own. And this is exactly what is continuing on these spaces. Now, I think lunch is ready. Things are not working here. Okay. So you can see then that we have a scenario which is problematic because we have people amongst ourselves, I know, who will tell you, why should I worry about surveillance when I have nothing to hide? Okay? But if I say, can I have your password? You don't have anything to hide. You are not going to give me your password. You are not going to shower in public. The reason is that because all of us need that quiet space where you think you are on your own. Not all of us can sing here, but some of us, if not all of us, do sing in the shower because we know somebody is not there watching you. You are on your own. Okay? It's that aspect of freedom that you have. We need, all need that space somehow. Now, because of what I'm saying, Jane Duncan, she's an academic at the University of Johannesburg, she points out this that no country, even for the argument, but no country that considers itself a democracy would want to be caught snooping or watching unsuspected citizens. Every country would want to be as democratic as possible. The reason for that is because surveillance is problematic. Now, there's a connection between surveillance and what is called privacy. So, if you are being monitored, it means certain aspects of privacy is also being taken away from you. And the privacy now is this thing that the passwords protect us from. It's this thing that the roof and the four walls and the door in your shower room actually protects you from the rest of the public. Suppose you know somebody is watching you through that keyhole somehow, your very presence seems interfered with. The moment you know someone is watching you, your very behavior changes. Now, surveillance is problematic because when you think someone is watching, someone is monitoring you, your behavior changes. You behave in the ways that you think someone watching you wants you to behave. You conform. And when that happens, critical aspects of freedoms are removed. You think, you express yourself in the ways that you think somebody wants you to express yourself. You associate with people that you think somebody wants you to associate with. At the same time, you're also disassociating with other people. So critical freedoms, that makes us who we are. freedom of assembly, freedom of association, freedom of expression, all these basically are endangered somehow. The problem, big problem that we have in most colonial African states is that over years of colonialism and then following with 30 years plus in most African countries of dictatorships, in most African countries the dictatorship is still there. You just choose which dictator you want to vote for. So all these years basically has shaped us, has made us believe that for us to be who we are, to be free, to be secure as a people, you need societies that are monitored. You need the police, you need the state that is able to monitor you. But the problem is that we become uncritical and we become citizens that cannot advance our own thinking. There are several people that have stood here. Somebody, I think, a presenter before, the one that has just left, talking about businesses online and whatnot. He's able to talk about that because he can think on his own. Suppose you don't have that. What you think basically is mass group thinking. And no good idea emerges from group thinking. People have to have a personal space where they can think, even think against the societal norms. But surveillance acts against these norms. So I'm supposed to be someone who is an expert in this presentation. I am not. What I'm trying to do here basically is to share my ideas with you, and we can reason together. And I wish this was a session where I would sit down and say, can we all have a discussion? I'm sure most of us don't think about these issues in those terms, but we should care about surveillance because surveillance actually affects our privacy. Our privacy affects our critical thinking. If you can't think critically, if you can't think differently, our societies suffer. We are a people that are driven by ideas. Those ideas can only manifest if you allow them to think independently and differently from associated norms. Thank you.